So welcome friends, stay tuned. We will be starting our capital gains session soon. So just it's going to be a very fascinating topic. Let's enjoy capital gains. So stay tuned. Right. So as discussed, there should be a profit or gain. So we'll discuss again this in length at a later slide. The asset transfer should be a capital asset defined in section 214. So what we're going to do is we're going to discuss what is capital asset shortly. There must be a transfer. Transfer is defined in section 247. And if you satisfy these three conditions, you're going to pay tax in the year of transfer, except for few sections. So now the term transfer is defined by section 2 subsection 47. So 247 defines a transfer as transfer includes. So first one is sale, exchange, relinquishment. Extinguishment of any rights or interest therein. Compulsory acquisition under any law. Conversion of capital asset into stock in trade introduced in assessment year 85-86. Any transaction involving the allowing of possession of any immovable property or retained in part performance of the contract of the nature referred to in section 53 of the Transfer of Property Act introduced in assessment year 88-89. So any transaction which has the effect of transferring or enabling the enjoyment of any immovable property, that is also introduced in assessment year 88. This is 247 clause 1, 247 clause 2, this is 247 clause 3, clause 4, clause 5, clause 6, and to maturity or redemption of zero coupon bonds introduced in assessment year 2006-7. The first three are there right from 1962-63. So the first three you have right from 62-63 you have. So the sale, exchange, relinquishment, compulsory acquisition. So these three are there right from 62-63. So the conversion of capital in stock in trade, as you can see from here, introduced my assessment year 85-86. Now, when it is introduced my assessment 85-86, again, what we need to take into account, what is the necessity? What is the meaning of conversion of capital into stock in trade? Just rewind your 11th standard accounting. First entry all of us would have learned in accounting. Proprietor brings cash as a capital contribution. Cash debit, capital account credit. First accounting entry. தமிழ்ல ஆனா அவனா மாதிரி நம்ம first அதான் கத்துட்டு இருக்கோம். First entry, cash to capital account. This is what all of us would have learned in accounting in our 11th standard. The second entry there would have been proprietor bringing an asset as his capital contribution. For example, Surya has got some lands. Now Surya wants to start a real estate business. He doesn't have much of a cash, so only some 1,000 rupees of cash. That is brought as a capital. 1,000 rupees brought as capital. Maybe sentimentally may bring 1,001 rupee as capital. So cash to capital 1,001. But he has got some land. So that land he wants to bring as a capital because he's going to do a real estate business, the buying and selling of land during a development real estate. So he wants to bring the land as a stock in trade into his business. So what he can do is he can bring the stock in trade, credit the capital account, but he has purchased it say 10 years back for 1 lakh. But today the value of that asset is 1 crore. Now, as a student of accounting, at what value you will record in the books of accounts? Forget about income tax for a minute. At what value will record this stock in trade into the business? Cost 10 years back purchase for say 1 lakh, but today its value is 1 crore. So he wants to bring this land as a part of stock in trade so that his capital balance can be maybe from the point of view of the banker, it might look a little bit more attractive because most of your bear of the bank also lend on the basis of debt equity ratio. Therefore, more the capital, you can also be in a position to raise more debt. So obviously you would not like to bring it the land at the cost for which is purchased. So, but today, luckily, the value of that land is 1 crore. Can he take the value of the land which is going to bring us a stock in trade as 1 crore? Or he has to take only as 1 lakh? No income tax question, accounting question. Yes, Surya.
1 lakh, sir.
Sorry?
1 lakh, sir.
1 lakh. But however, I think why you saying 1 lakh? Why not 1 crore?
Sir, cost for NRV whichever is less, sir. Valuation of inventory, stock in trade.
So, but what you missed out here is you are bringing this stock in trade only today, right?
Yes, sir.
And you are not purchased. Now, what is the cost of the stock in trade? That's the question. The cost of the stock in trade, worldwide accounting allows you when you are bringing your investment into stock in trade worldwide, anywhere in the world, you can take fair market value on the date of conversion as your cost.
Yes, sir.
Not only in India, that is the cost. So you can take your capital as 1 crore and take your stock in trade as 1 crore.
Yes, sir.
Now, assuming that after 10 days, you are selling this for 1 crore. What is the profit?
0, sir.
0. So now the profit is going to be 0. Correct?
Yes,
Good
sir.
one. Now, the only question which arises now, the profit, even for the purpose of income tax, the profit on this will be taken first when you sell the stock in trade. Stock in trade sale will be assessed only as a business income. It will not be assessed as a capital gains when you sell the stock in trade. Right?
Yes,
So
sir.
now, so your business income is now going to become 0. But what is your real profit? So you can also go to this slide, you will find in the meaning of capital asset, they specifically say does not include stock in trade. So even in capital gains, the meaning of capital asset does not include stock in trade. The reason is stock in trade sale is going to be taken under business income. So therefore, they don't want it to be taxed in capital gains also. So therefore, there is no issues at all. Even in this, you find definition of capital asset is also very clearly specifying it does not include stock in trade. Right? So in accounting also, you're going to show this as normal profit. But what is the real profit here? Real profit.
நீங்க கொடுத்த எக்ஸாம்பிள் இல்லையா சார்?
ஆமா.
99 lakhs, sir.
99 lakhs. So அப்போ business income taxable 0 தான், correct? Because
Yes, sir.
the cost is 1 crore, sale is also 1 crore. But what the assessee did here was, he said there is no capital gains also. Now, beautiful argument. What the assessee was saying, there is no capital gains. So again, when his argument was, in order to come under capital gains, there must be a transfer, there must be a capital asset, there must be a profit or gain. 3 conditions must be satisfied. So first point, what is there was no transfer here. The argument for him as to why there was no transfer, he leave the fourth point. So first 3 alone you check, because we are considering why the fourth point has to be introduced from 85 86. If it is sale, I don't know, sale only when you are sold the stock in trade. At the time when you brought into the business, there was no sale. Yeah, you are bringing only as a capital contribution. At that point of time, not sold. Final sale is only sale of stock in trade, right? Therefore, it is only a business income. When you brought into the business, you can't say there is any sale. When you brought
Yes, sir.
into the business, there is no exchange. When you brought into the business, there is no relinquishment. Relinquishment means voluntary throwing away of rights. Voluntarily you throw away rights. Assuming that me and Surya own a property jointly. I said, my rights in the property, I say, Surya, you take. That is a relinquishment. That means I voluntarily throw away my rights in the property.
Yes, sir.
Extinguishment is not voluntary. I lose the right in the property, but it's not voluntary. Exchange is a consideration, is not in cash. Consideration by way of another asset. Sale is where you have consideration in cash. Compulsory acquisition under any law for construction of your MRTS or metro, the lands are acquired. So that is a compulsory acquisition. Now, So therefore, the SEC made a beautiful argument. When I transferred my personal asset or my investment into my stock in trade, there is no sale, there was no exchange, there was no relinquishment, there is no extinguishment, there is no compulsory acquisition. Therefore, it is not a transfer. So you can just once again try to connect your accounting. Possibly in accounting, we all know there is a concept called separate entity concept, that the businessman and the business are separate. That is one of the reasons why capital account appears in the liability side. For
Yes,
a
sir.
proprietor, capital is an asset, but for the business owes the proprietor. The business and the individual are separate in accounting. But
Yes, sir.
in income tax, you just recollect the charging section of section 4. Section 4 says you have to pay tax for every assessment year on the total income of the previous year by every person. The tax is on the person, not on the business. Sachin Tendulkar is taxable, not Sachin Tendulkar's business. He has got a hotel, it's not taxable. It's only the individual is taxable. It's the entity which is taxable. And therefore, there is no concept of separate entity in income tax. So therefore, the person and business, we don't call it as separate. So it is one of the source of income of the person. So therefore, the SEC made this beautiful argument. There is no transfer because me and my business are not different for tax. I cannot transfer to myself. First class we discussed a principle called principle of mutuality. One has to make profit with an outsider. But when the outsider comes to this transaction, when the outsider comes, when I sell this land as a stock in trade to a third party, the outsider comes. But when the outsider comes, this land has become stock in trade. It is not a capital asset. At the time of conversion, it is not a transfer. Therefore, SEC made a brilliant argument. This is not a transfer. Final sale is stock in trade, only business income. Conversion is no transfer, therefore there is no capital gains. And this view was accepted by the Supreme Court in a case law called by Srimbai K. Kuka. By Srimbai K. Kuka. Conversion of capital asset into stock in trade is not a transfer, and therefore there will not be any capital gains. So you should understand the implications here. That means what people will do, we will not be reading so many sections 45 to 55 and all. Before you want to sell an asset, start a business. Take this asset into your business as a stock in trade. For example, assume you have 1 kg gold. Start a jewelry business. Take your gold into your business. Credit the capital market value. Then you sell the gold. Business income zero. No capital gains. What you can do is after finishing this transaction, close your business. That's all over. No capital gains, no business income. See, everybody will start a business for 1 day or 5 days or 10 days, sell the asset and finish off. Therefore, they specifically provide conversion of capital asset into stock in trade. It's a transfer. What is very special about this transaction? Normally, a transaction equals 2%. When you say transfer, you need 2%. No, you need a transferor, you need a transferee. But in 247 clause 4, transferor and transferee are same. There are no 2 persons there in the transaction. But still income tax calls it as a transfer. Why it has to call it as a transfer? Because already Supreme Court has taken a stand. This is not a transfer. There is no capital gains. That means it gave a simple, easy tax planning opportunity for people to start a business for few days or few months, transfer the asset, sell it off, pay no business income tax, no capital gains tax. In fact, they will write off some expenditure and claim business loss also. And you all know business loss can be set off against any area of income except salaries. So therefore, they introduce this particular point. So any transaction involving the allowing of possession, this was basically targeted for joint development. So if you have a land, the builder will come back and say, I'll construct 8 flats. I'll take 4 flats, you take 4 flats. In those circumstances, there was a problem of how to compute capital gains and all the stuff. That is why this particular section was there. So any transaction, the effect of transferring, enabling enjoyment of maturity or redemption of zero coupon bonds. So this is the latest entry into the section, which is 2006-7. So normally, so zero coupon means zero interest. Will any one of you accept zero interest? Assuming that I take 100 rupees, you give me today, I will give after 10 years 100 rupees. I don't know, will anyone with a financial thinking in his mind, will they do it? Yeah, yeah. 100 ரூபாய் கொடுத்து 10 வருஷம் கழிச்சு 100 ரூபாய் எடுத்துப்போமா? எடுக்க மாட்டோம். You would all read in capital budgeting the net present value. In fact, if you're going to get after 10 years, you're going to lose dramatically on account of sheer time value. Forget about inflation. Time value of money நமக்கு பயங்கர loss இருக்கும். Obviously, that is one reason why you are getting interest. In zero coupon bonds, you will get 100 rupees after 10 years, but you don't have to pay 100 rupees now. You have to pay amount lesser than 100 rupees. So as let's assume for the sake of simplicity, you got to pay 80 rupees. So you pay 80 rupees today and you get 100 rupees after 10 years. Whether this 20 rupees, is it interest or is it a capital gain? That was the issue. Now, after this particular amendment, maturity or redemption of a zero coupon bond, they make it very clear it will be taxed only as a capital gains. But typically, before this amendment, my argument will be I pay 80 rupees, I get 100 rupees. Normally, I may get 100 rupees, at the redemption, I may get 130. So the difference is 30 rupees is the interest I get for getting the payment. So similarly, I pay lesser today to get the amount at par. That should also be interest. But however, after so much of controversy, whether it's interest or whether it is a capital gains, the sections have been specifically amended to provide maturity or redemption of a zero coupon bond will be taxed only as a capital gains. So as far as the transfer is concerned, just to repeat, so sale, exchange, relinquishment, sale cash, exchange another asset, relinquishment, throwing away of rights, extinguishment of an interest is not voluntary, relinquishment is voluntary. To borrow from Companies Act, you would have heard about surrender of shares and forfeiture of shares. Surrender of shares you do voluntarily, so that will be a relinquishment. Forfeiture of shares is not voluntary. You don't pay the call money, company will take your rights in the asset, that is extinguishment. So that's one way you can understand the difference between relinquishment and extinguishment. Compulsory acquisition, which we already talked about, which under the law, your capital asset is acquired either for construction of a bridge or construction of so metro or so many projects the government has got, for which the asset are acquired compulsorily. So, so other points we already discussed, therefore I'll move to the next one. So this is basically one which is short. Don't worry about this. It's not relevant at the intermediate level. The amendment was brought in for the purposes of a very famous Vodafone case. So in the case of Vodafone case, they did the structuring of transaction in such a manner where so Vodafone had three layers, or tax haven country they floated the company, then a subsidiary in subsidiary mono subsidiary in different countries, to eventually the ultimate holding company acquired the shares of Hutch in that entity where there is no capital gains tax. So thereby what happened was they are able to buy the Vodafone India through a transaction structured in a tax haven in three layers. A holds in B, B holds in C, C holds in D. If I transfer the shares of A, indirectly I can become a holder of D. So that's why they try to clarify that Vodafone case is what they just had their mind in defining this transfer. At the intermediate level, you don't worry about it. Maybe when you're free, you can go through that. The next one is what we have to see is the meaning of capital asset. The why the capital asset meaning is very important is one, there must be a transfer. The transfer must be in relation to a capital asset. There must be a profit or gain. So therefore, we need to understand what is a capital asset. The capital asset means it's a very, very sweeping definition. Property of any kind held by necessity, whether or not connected to this business or profession. Sweeping definition. They say any property, whether connected to business or profession, is a capital asset. So therefore, we can never try to defend a case on the basis of capital asset is of no use, because the courts have consistently held the word property appearing in 214 as a widest import, which will include anything except which does not include given in the proviso. The second point is that securities held by foreign institutional investors, which has invested in such securities in accordance with SEBI regulations. So basically, the FIS actually what they do is what is popularly called as the PMS or portfolio management services. So the issue here was whether a portfolio management services should it be considered as a capital gains or a business income. That is the challenge. The problem here is also you must understand most of this, as you can sign, it is invested in such securities in accordance with SEBI regulations. That means these investments are going to be made only in the listed shares of India. So when you do a listed shares, we have already seen at the introduction, if it is a short-term capital gains under 111A, you have to only pay 15% tax. And if it's a long-term capital gains under 112A, you're going to pay only 10% tax. So if it is a business income and if you're a company, then a foreign company for business income is subject tax India at the rate of 40%. So therefore, there has been a huge debate as to how to tax the portfolio management services of the foreign investors. Is it a business income or capital gains? If you are also an income tax officer, you would prefer to tax it as a business income and charge tax at the rate of 40%. So that is one reason why this debate was going on. But finally, the government itself has changed the definition of capital asset. So meaning of capital asset will include any securities held by foreign institutional investor. That means PMS services or of a foreign investor is definitely a capital asset. It not be taxed as a business income. What is unfortunate here is that similar definition is not given for Indian investor. So that means portfolio management services of Indian investors still we will have a problem because the stock in trade is something which is a very you know very difficult to define. So what is the stock in trade? What is it? For example, you buy a property. Is it investment or a stock in trade? Means investment or capital asset. For the real estate company like your DLF or CBROS, for them the same residential building is a stock in trade, right? So therefore, the how so for you television is a capital asset, but however for Vivex or for Samsung or for LG or for any television company, the same television is a stock in trade. For you, a car is a capital asset. The car for Maruti is a stock in trade. Asset is same, but only thing is then if you're going to trade on the same, it becomes a stock in trade. If you don't trade on them, it becomes an investment or a capital asset. But however, this controversy will always be there. You might think that it's an investment, but the department say you're dealing it so frequently, therefore I'll take it as a stock in trade. So the clarity has been done for foreign institutional investors, but domestic investors still will have a problem. But don't worry, we're not going to touch that in the examination on this particular point. But FIs are only going to be considered as a capital asset for the purpose of their investment in India. So what are the exceptions? Therefore, focus on the exceptions because you can never defend any case on the basis of meaning of property. So what are the exceptions? Stock in trade, consumable stores, raw materials held for the purpose of business. We have already given the reasons for this because the stock in trade, consumable stores, raw materials, the transfer of this are going to be taxed under business income. So therefore, this will not be taxed under capital gains. Personal effects, that is to say, movable property excluding jewelry held for personal use by the SSC or any member of his family dependent on him. So for example, if you have a mobile phone, so the sale of that mobile phone will not be considered as a capital gains because mobile phone is something which most of us try to use very intimately. In fact, even a few minutes if it is not there. So there is a lot of stress comes to all of us. So similarly, you may have a two-wheeler or four-wheeler for personal purposes, which is intimately held for the purpose of personal purposes. The sale of them will not attract any capital gains. However, if the same car, if it is used for the purpose of business, then it ceases to be a personal effect. Personal effects means movable property held for personal use. A car held for personal use is not a capital asset, but a car once you start using for the business, it becomes a capital asset. But only exception here is the jewelry is the exception for the same. So jewelry is always going to be considered as a capital asset and therefore it will be subject to capital gains on sale of the same. Agricultural land in rural area is very, very important from the examination point of view. So the issue here is that we all know that agricultural income is not taxable. Agricultural income is not taxable. We also found the reason for the same and the first clause. The Constitution under 18 number 82 of List 17 schedule provides for tax on income other than agricultural income. So the Constitution does not allow the central government to charge tax on agricultural income, which is a state subject. So therefore, the issue here was whether agricultural income will it include profit on sale of agricultural land. That was an issue. So there were some different decisions by different courts. Some courts said it will also include sale of agricultural land. Some courts took a stand, no, 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 it will not include that. So therefore, in order to uh, clear the doubt beyond any doubt for anybody. So if you have an agricultural land in a rural area, then you don't have to pay capital gains tax. If you have an agricultural land in urban area, you have to pay capital gains tax. So one logical question which will arise now is what is a rural area? That we will see shortly. So if you have a agricultural land in rural area, so don't visualize when you are talking about rural area, some remote place that nobody stays and all. Once you see the rural area, so in fact, places those who are familiar with Chennai, the areas like OMR, ECR, and all, for a substantial period of time were only rural agriculture land. They were all agricultural lands earlier. There used to be a huge mango trees in OMR and all. None of them will be visible today. So, so therefore, don't just put yourself as a rural area means some Paka Gramam. There will be some Alamaram will be there, and somebody will be sitting. Natama Tirpa Mati Sola and the Marla don't visualize. It's something will be surprised with the definition of the rural area. So gold bonds and special bearer bonds, they're all 1980 and 1991 bonds, may not have any relevance. The gold deposit bonds issued under the gold deposit in 1999 or the deposit certificates issued under the gold monetization scheme of the central government. So these are some gold bonds which the government wants to incentivize world to subscribe. They are not capital gains. So the last one, don't worry about this is again on account of Vodafone. So transfer definition, capitalist definition amended on account of Vodafone case. So at the intermediate level, that may not be that much relevant. So the meaning of rural area. So that's a very interesting point. As I said, any area other than, so that means to be a rural area, you should not fall under any of these 2 points. First one, any area which is comprised within the jurisdiction of a municipality or a cantonment board which has a population of not less than 10,000. So that means if you have an agricultural land in a place where the population is 10,000 or more, then it will be urban agricultural land. So you should not fall under this. So if your population is 10,000 or more, straight, it will be an urban agricultural land. Assume for a moment you have an agricultural land in an area where the population is less than 10,000, but don't jump to the conclusion that means it is rural. The second criteria which you have to see is the two criteria which are given in the table, or three rather. So your agricultural land, you have to measure the distance, and if the nearest town or the municipality has got a population of more than 10,000 but does not exceed 1 lakh. So, and if your agricultural land is situated within 2 kilometers, then it will be considered as urban agricultural land. So that means your population is less than 10,000. The nearest municipality's population is between 10,000 to 1 lakh. And then in that particular case, your agricultural land should come within the vicinity of 2 kilometers. If it is beyond 2 kilometers, not a problem. So 6 kilometers, more than 1 lakh, but does not exceed 10 lakhs. Assuming your nearest municipality has got a population of 8 lakhs, then what you have to see is whether your agricultural land is within 6 kilometers. What if the nearest municipality population 10 lakhs? For example, if you have an agricultural land with outside Chennai city limits, so and if that particular place population is less than 10,000, so what you have to see is that so whether it is within a distance of 8 kilometers is what we have to see. So 2 kilometers for 10,000 to 1 lakh, 6 kilometers for 1 lakh to 10 lakhs, 8 kilometers. But what is very important is this distance has to be measured aerially. Measured the shortest distance measured aerially. The shortest distance means the way in which crow flies. And if you sit in the suddenly you will find, thanks to COVID, a lot of people are spending some time in the motamadi. Now, if you see in the motamadi, the crow will always fly in a straight line. So therefore you have to measure like that. See, for example, from my motamadi, so Kapaleswara temple, just looks like it's only some 300 400 meters. If I go with a proper road, it will be around 2 kilometers. So now how to measure the distance? The law says today you have to measure the distance only aerially. So that means I have to take the distance of a Kavaleswara temple from my house is only 500 meters and not 2 kilometers by the proper road, because the road goes zigzag, right? If I measure by the road, it will show 2 kilometers. But whereas if I measure aerially, it will show hardly some 500 meters. I doubt even that will be 500 meters. It will be even less than that. Because so many things when we see from our Motamadi looks very, very near, because we could find one building which is very near Satyam Theatre. Satyam Theatre is around 4.5 kilometers from our place, or 5 kilometers by the normal road. But from our Motamadi, if you just see that building next to Satyam Theatre, it just looks like hardly a kilometer. So that is how the distance has got to be measured now. So not by proper road, because a lot of courts have taken a stand. One classic example is like this Koturpuram. None of you, most of you will not be aware of the Koturpuram road via Nandaram today. It's only there now. When I was like you, that road was not there at all. If I have to reach Koturpuram, I have to go to Adayar, opposite to the cancer hospital. There will be a road. Only in that road I can come. I cannot come to Nandaram at all because that was a closed road. Uh, just that means I may be 100 meters, but I have to take the distance as 8 kilometers. The courts have also said the distance is only 8 kilometers because distance has to be measured only by the proper road, not aerially. That is why they changed the law. Today, the law says the distance has to be measured aerially and not by proper road. So, this as a result of it would make a lot of agricultural lands, a lot of places, the distance will come down dramatically on account of this change. So, that is about the meaning of the personal effects. So, these are some of the personal effects which maybe you can connect this with income from other sources also. You will find this archaeological collections, drawings, paintings, sculptures, any work of art. This is also there in 56 to 10, the meaning of property. Same thing they are also trying to bring it here, that archaeological collections, drawing, painting, sculptures, any work of art will not be considered as a jewelry. This is an amended definition from assessment year 2007-8. Apart from jewelry, archaeological collections, drawings, paintings, sculptures, any work of art. So these are also not going to be considered as personal effects. So that means when you want to remember 56 to 10, the meaning of property, jewelry is there, archaeological collection there, drawings is there, paintings there, sculptures there, 1 year of art. So 3 plus 3, 6 common between this section and that. Their immovable property, 1, land or building. Then you have 8 movable properties, 6 is already there. Other 2 are bullion and shares and securities. This is one easy way of remembering the definition of property. Jewelry is there, archaeological drawings there, paintings, sculptures, work of art. 6 common, bullion 7, shares and security 8. So 8 movable properties, 1 immovable property, land or building, totally 9 properties in 56 to 10. So therefore, never try to complicate. So many sections are there. How can I remember 8 subjects are there? ரொம்ப நீயே காம்ப்ளிகேட் பண்ணிக்காத. ஞாபகம் வச்சுக்கணும் அப்படின்னா ஞாபகம் வச்சுக்கலாம், கவலையப்படாத. ஒன்லி திங்ஸ் தட் வி ஹேவ் டு ஃபைண்ட் சம் வே அவுட். ஞாபகம் வச்சுக்கணும்னு நம்ம ஆசைப்படணும். நம்மளே நம்ம செல்ஃப் சிம்பத்தியே பண்ணிக்கூடாது. ஆக்சுவலா ஐயோ எவ்வளோ ஒரு தெரியுமா, 8 சப்ஜெக்ட்டுக்கு தெரியுமா, நான் எவ்வளோ பண்றேன், அதான் வேணாம். 8 சப்ஜெக்ட் தான் இருக்கு, அப்படி அப்படி வேற மாதிரி போட்டுரு அப்படியே. ஸோ அந்த செல்ஃப் சிம்பத்தி வந்துட்டாலே நம்ம ஒழுங்கா படிக்க மாட்டோம் ஆக்சுவலா. ஸோ அதனால ஜம்முன்னு அப்படியே first class or so now so the meaning of long term and short term. So long term capital asset, very easy, an asset which is not a short term capital asset. Long term capital gains arising on transfer of long term capital asset. Short term capital asset, 12 months or 24 months or 36 months, depending upon the type of capital asset. Short term capital gains means capital gains arising on transfer of short term capital asset. We'll see as to why this definition is very important, because the capital gains computation is going to be different based on this. So meaning of short term, for listed securities, units of an equity oriented fund, zero coupon bonds held for not more than 12 months. But that means for three assets, listed securities, units of an equity oriented fund, zero coupon bonds held for not more than 12 months. Unlisted shares, land or building, not more than 24 months. Any other capital asset held for not more than 36 months. So 12, 24, 36. Listed securities, units of an equity oriented fund, zero coupon bonds, 12. Unlisted shares and or building, 24. Any other capital asset, not more than 36 months. So obviously, if you don't come into the first or second, it's 36 months. So only point there is that units of an equity oriented fund, that EOF means equity oriented fund. So what is the meaning of an equity oriented fund? The equity oriented fund means normally we should understand two things. Units is basically is a mutual fund. So you will find it difficult to invest in stock market. So for those who neither have the time nor the knowledge, the best way of investing in stock markets is through mutual funds. Mutual funds collect money from various investors, and they have MBAs and chartered accountants. So analyze the stock market, analyze the fundamentals, analyze the technicals, invest. So therefore, an expert uh, take your money not only from you, for many people, and invest in the market. So they can invest in uh, debt funds, they can invest in equity, they can invest in combination. Maybe you would be aware of recently one of the mutual funds discontinued 6 debt fund schemes, which really put some shockwaves among the investors. The equity oriented fund is a fund where the amount raised by the mutual fund should be invested to the extent of at least 65% in the shares of domestic companies. That means if I raise 1 crore, I should put minimum of 65 lakhs in equity. Remaining 35 lakhs, I can put in gold, I can put it in debt, I can do in anything. But unless I invest minimum 65%, it will not become an equity oriented fund. For example, I put 50% equity and 50% debt, then it is not an equity oriented fund. As a result of it, the holding period for becoming long term will become 36 months instead of 12 months. Similarly, take the case of a debentures. If it is listed, 12 months. If it is unlisted, it will be 36 months. Because in the second one, we have only unlisted shares. Be careful. Securities will include debentures also, but unlisted shares alone is there. So therefore, unlisted shares will be 24 months. So we have to very, very carefully do this. The computation of capital gains, everything is going to depend upon short term or long term. This is a very important definition. So what we will do is we'll just break for 7:20 or ஆக்சுவலாக ஒரு 7:45 வரைக்கும் ஒரு சின்ன பிரேக் எடுத்துப்போம் ஆக்சுவலாக. ஸோ பிரேக் எடுத்து it will continue the importance of why the capital asset has to be distinguished between short term and long term. அது மாதிரி will continue on that.